Worship of police have been skeptical when investigating these acts, just as we are in reporting them. But there is no question that something is going on out there, and that's sufficient reason for 2020 to look into it. One caution, we believe that some of the pictures and descriptions in Tom Jarrell's report may be disturbing and even frightening, particularly to younger viewers. Here is Tom's report.
Dateline, Northport, Long Island. A quiet community rocked by reports a teenager was dragged through these woods toward a late-night ritual of death. An eyewitness said the victim, Gary Lowers, was forced to pray to Satan as he was repeatedly stabbed to death. 2 young men were arrested. James Troiano was found innocent last month, but his alleged accomplice never made it to trial. Ricky Casso committed suicide in jail the day after his arrest. Despite numerous signs that Casso was into Satanism and rock music associated with devil worship, police steadfastly refused to label this case satanic. The official explanation, a drug-related crime. Dateline, Phoenix, Arizona, 140 dogs found slaughtered. Across the country, police tell us, there have been more than 15,000 animal mutilations, and often they were clearly used in some kind of bizarre ritual, but there's no official explanation. Dateline, Walnut Grove, Alabama. Police are called in to investigate the site of what appears to have been a ritual. They find various satanic paraphernalia, including pictures of the devil. There was a routine inquiry which didn't discover what was going on here. Across this country and Canada, satanic graffiti is turning up on public buildings and abandoned buildings where police suspect secret meetings are being held by people calling themselves Satanists, people who worship the devil. Most often found, the inverted 5-pointed satanic pentagram, the upside-down cross, the evil eye, references to Babylon, and the devil's number, 666. Vandals often target churches. Here in southern Maine, after a dozen churches were painted with satanic symbols, police arrested a suspect.
Worried about the message. That's one comment.
Although vandalism charges were later dropped, he offered an explanation for the church graffiti from behind a locked door.
Anyone that receives the mark of the beast, which is 666, is his number, is going to burn in hell forever and ever.
It's the way some people interpret the Bible. The book of Revelations, where it's written, Satan can be identified by the number 666, calling him the beast, which deceiveth the whole world. The goat's head is a key symbol of the beast. Yet throughout history, Satan has taken on many different shapes and disguises. He's widely considered by conventional religions as the embodiment of evil, on a mission to tempt man to sin and destroy God's kingdom. Today, we have found Satan is alive and thriving, or at least plenty of people believe he is. His followers are extremely secretive, but found in all walks of life. Modern Satanism was shockingly dramatized on the screen in the mid-60s with the release of Rosemary's Baby.
What have you done to it? What have you done to its eyes?
He has his father's eyes.
It's a movie that's been described as the best advertisement that devil worship has ever had.
What are you talking about? Guy's eyes are normal. What have you done to him, you maniac?
Satan is his father, not Guy. He came up from hell and begat a son of mortal woman. Hail, Satan!
Hail, Satan!
Satan is his father, and his name is Adrian. He shall overthrow the mighty in their temples. He shall redeem the despised and wreak vengeance.
The zeal of these fictional devil worshippers is strikingly similar to that of real-life Satanists.
God is dead!
Hail, Satan!
Satan lives!
See, these guys, they wouldn't leave him alone.
Mike Warnke is a former Satanist. Today, he's a successful comedian, preaching Christianity in the form of humor. But back in the 60s, he was one of Satanism's high priests.
The things that you would see in a satanic altar.
He showed us what a satanic temple might resemble, and typical implements used to worship the devil.
The bones usually are used in a ceremony that calls for telling the future with the bones or a part of the deceased person.
He also explained what attracted him to Satanism.
I was basically drawn into it when I was young, just wanting to be somebody special. I just wanted to be different than everybody and have something that was special that everybody, looked up to.
This is a 15-year-old boy who also wanted to be special. Before hanging himself, he wrote on his body, "I'm coming home, Master, and Satan lives," and 666. It was a case with such clear satanic symbols, it brought two police officers together. Sandy Gallant is one of them. She's a San Francisco policewoman and now a leading authority on satanic crime, a specialty other cops often scoff at.
As time goes on, maybe my work gets a little more credibility. There's one guy that still walks around, and when he sees me, he goes like this wherever he goes. But I've gotten pretty much used to that.
The other officer is Dale Griffiths, chief of a small police department halfway across the country in Tiffin, Ohio.
We have kids being killed. We have people missing in America. We have our own MIAs right here. We have cattle being killed. We have all types of perversion going on, and it's affecting America.
America is being affected. Nationwide, we found that minor cases of satanic activity light up the map. Not a single state is unaffected. But even more frightening is the number of reported murders and suicides with satanic clues. All of them were investigated by police, but usually without much result. We found that Satanism falls into three categories. One, self-styled Satanist, a growing number of young people who dabble in devil worship. Two, religious Satanist, people who publicly worship the devil, a right that's protected by law. And three, satanic cults, what appear to be highly secretive groups committing criminal acts, including murder. First, let's examine self-styled Satanists like Ricky Casso. Often they're teenagers who learn that the message of Satanism is for sale right in the neighborhood. This shopping mall in affluent Westchester County, New York, exemplifies how easy it is for children, or adults for that matter, to get their hands on satanic material. We stress it's perfectly legal, and these are typical commercial outlets you'll find just about anywhere. 3 stores side by side, a bookstore, a music store, a videotape center, each offering seemingly harmless types of entertainment, like movies. Here at the neighborhood videotape store, take a look at the number of movies that involve Satanism. Most were popular films in their day, but even today, if one is inclined to believe in Satanism, it's a way to actually see the devil and perhaps be inspired. In The Exorcist, it is the tremendous power of the devil himself controlling a little girl's body against the will of a priest. It makes the movie still one of the most popular examples of evil versus good.
By this sign the blood of our Lord Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with the Father and the Holy Spirit.
It wasn't that a demon jumped out of the TV and grabbed me by the face and dragged me down the road and forced me to join the Church of Satan. It was just that there were certain things in this program that piqued my interest, and then I decided to study more on my own. And if the devil has PR, then it is, cinema.
Then there's also the satanic literature, which includes many books that are sold in many bookstores. Librarians point out that they're among the most popular books on their shelves. Here, as in almost any bookstore, you'll find both the Satanic Bible and its companion, the Satanic Rituals, a step-by-step guide to performing evil rites.
Kids get their ideas, especially their psychological pumping up, so to speak, from the literature. And books play an extremely important part.
And finally, music, which is found here in the neighborhood record store under the category of heavy metal music. The satanic message is clear, both in the album covers and in the lyrics, which are reaching impressionable young minds. And the musical message comes across loud and clear at concerts and now through rock videos. The symbolism is all there. The satanic pentagram, the upside-down cross, the blank eyes of the beast, the rebellion against Christianity, and again, the obsession with death. According to most groups, it's all done in fun, but according to police, it's having an effect on many children, a growing subculture that mixes heavy metal music with drugs and the occult. In addition to groups that are blatantly satanic, there are also many recordings which some believe may contain satanic references in the form of backward messages. What's a popular song that has a reference to the devil in it? Chris Edmonds is a Detroit disc jockey
Stairway to Heaven.
whose specialty is finding secret recorded messages exhorting the devil by playing music popular with kids in reverse, a technique they've learned to use.
Okay, the phrase we're looking for is, and there's still time to change, the road you're on.
Now flip it for us.
Okay. A lot of people hear the phrase, my sweet Satan, here when we play this backwards. Can you hear it?
My sweet Satan. How often do you find heavy metal music indicators at the scene of a crime involving satanic worship?
Probably about 35-40% of calls.
Regularly, then?
Yes.
This artwork is from a homicide case that combined heavy metal music with self-styled Satanism. It's the work of 18-year-old Scott Waterhouse, a so-called Satanist whose drawings clearly show he had murder on his mind. He's now serving a life prison term for the slaying of 12-year-old Giselle Cody. Before this case, officers here at the local police station in Sanford, Maine, had never even heard about satanic crimes. But that's all changed. The officer who broke the case was State Detective Mo Olette. When you reached the crime scene, what did you find?
When I reached the crime scene, the local police had cordoned the area off, showed me the bank and where the young lady was found. She was probably killed right there at that particular area. She was strangled.
Waterhouse was seen leaving the crime scene, and in a deposition, when he was later questioned by Officer Olette, he seemed almost proud to boast, "I'm a Satanist." Waterhouse also described how he first became involved in it. In a bookstore, my friend hit the shelf and a book fell out, and I caught it, and it had a pretty weird-looking guy on the back. The book was the Satanic Bible by Anton LaVey. After Scott Waterhouse's trial, both the prosecution and the victim's father claimed that although the Satanic Bible did not condone violence, Waterhouse had interpreted it that way.
The book made you feel, do what you want to do, and the heck with everybody else, more or less. And I believe that that had a lot to do with it.
It tries to make itself innocuous. But if you actually read it and believe it to the letter, it's a very dangerous manifesto.
The author of the Satanic Bible, Anton LaVey, is a former lion tamer and palm reader who in 1966 founded the First Church of Satan. It quickly became the country's most prominent satanic organization, fully protected as a religion under the law.
This is a very selfish religion. We believe in greed, we believe in selfishness, we believe in all of the lustful thoughts that motivate man, because this is man's natural feeling. This is based on what man naturally would do.
The Church of Satan and other organized devil worship groups represent our second category, religious Satanists. Although LaVey would not talk to us, we can get a glimpse of his theories and his rituals in this 1970 documentary on his church.
We feel a person should be free to indulge in all of the so-called fetishes that they would desire, as long as they don't hurt anyone that doesn't deserve or wish to be hurt. Hail Satan! Hail Satan! We perform human sacrifices by proxy, you might say, the destruction of human beings who would, let's say, create an antagonistic situation towards us in the form of curses and hexes. Not in actual blood rituals, because certainly the destruction of a human being physically is illegal.
Police we spoke to say they have never made a link between this satanic church and the satanic crimes being committed. However, some incidents described to us by witnesses from around the country are strikingly similar to these ritualistic scenes. For example, the ritualistic embracing of death, actually being placed inside a coffin containing a body.
Lo, you are free to end it when you will.
Or ritualistic sacrifice, using a voodoo-type doll to place a curse on an unsuspecting victim. It's nothing that can be called physically harmful or illegal.
Almighty Satan, destroy those who love God.
Although not connected to the Church of Satan, these 12-year-old boys, with their parents' consent, demonstrated how they were taught to inflict pain on their enemies. They also claimed they witnessed sacrificial murder by members of our third category of Satanism, satanic cults. Police have found no proof, made no arrest, but that's no surprise. For nationwide, police are hearing strikingly similar horror stories, and not one has ever been proved. Take, for example, this case, the mother of a young victim who asked not to be identified.
Usually they had the children kill the infants or the other kids.
The children who were there actually were given knives?
Yes, they were. And if they refused to do it, an adult, usually the child's father or mother, would actually take the child's hand and make them kill the child.
There's also this similar case that links child sex abuse with murder.
The children were given knives and told to go and stab those bodies. And my grandchildren told me that they couldn't do that, that it wasn't possible, that they could only get the knives to go in about that far. And then the adults put their hands over the children's hands and shoved the knives in.
Was there any reference to the devil?
Yeah.
Yes.
And this case now under police investigation involving young boys describing murder.
Tell me what you were asked to do.
I was asked to stab him.
To stab him. And this was in front of the other people who were there? Were you given a knife?
Yes.
And were you told what would happen to you if you didn't?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what they said?
This will happen to you.
So you either stab him or you'll be stabbed was about what it came down to. When the oldest boy describes stabbing him with a knife, what's his reaction?
It's a hard thing for him to say. He's been more apt to act it out.
Do you remember his eyes?
With their guardian's consent, the boys used a doll to illustrate what they did.
You say you were given the knife, and then what did you do?
Go like this.
Did you push the knife all the way in deep, or did you just touch the skin?
All the way in deep.
In deep. Were you in the room where this was going on? Did you see what happened to the child that was stuck with the knife?
Yeah.
What do you remember?
Or blood.
Ritualistic murder has become a specialty for San Francisco's chief medical examiner.
Are local investigators really prepared, equipped? Do they know what to look for when investigating these cases?
No, I don't think they do. Even though many different people are trying to get out the message about ritualistic or funny types of killings, first of all, just on their face value, they sound so unusual or bizarre that most people hearing that message really don't think that it's true.
It's bizarre and hard to prove. Yet details that were told to us in interviews conducted across the country were later verified by authorities who say there are consistent telltale clues. And they provide a checklist of 6 satanic practices to look for. For example, being placed inside a coffin. It's an experience that many children are describing.
Well, the adults would dig up the caskets from the graveyards, and all the members, including the children, were made to lay in the remains of whatever was in the casket.
Get in a casket with a decomposed body.
Right, and then the casket was closed, and they would be lowered into the ground while they were in the casket.
The author of a popular book on Satanism, Dr. Lawrence Pastor.
Children are involved in graveyards and crematoria, in funeral parlors, because one of the primary focuses of these people is death. Everything is attempted to be destroyed and killed in that child and in society, everything of goodness. And death is a major preoccupation.
Another indicator, satanic paraphernalia. In every case, the children talk about precisely the same setting.
They described a satanic goat's head being on the wall over the table. They described a lot of candles. And they described people in black and white robes with hoods.
The hood, Mike, what's this for?
This is to create for whoever's practicing a magical atmosphere.
The colors mean anything?
Yeah, the red ones would be used for some types of sexual rituals, people who are doing sexual magic. This would be used for ordinary ceremonies and also for ceremonies where you'd be throwing a curse on somebody.
Another indicator, kidnapping. In almost every case, the children have talked about children who were snatched and later sacrificed.
They were taught to aid in the kidnapping of children. What they would do is the kids would go and play with the children and then tell them that they were either going to go to a party or that there was some toys or whatever and get them so they weren't on the move, and then her father and other members would grab the kids.
Do you find missing children sometimes fall prey to these people?
I believe that they do. We can't prove that they do. But as a law enforcement officer, I question 2 million children missing in the United States, knowing that many of those are not runaways and are so young that they couldn't run away anyway.
Number 4, sexual abuse aimed at destroying faith in God. It's being described by numerous children.
What were the parallels with what the boys have told you and the worship of Satan?
Well, first of all, the sexual abuse, the pornography, which always seems to go hand in hand. The boys talked about how these people actually said, "I hate God," and they used a very deep voice when they talked about that.
One of their primary aims is to destroy the belief system within a child, to make a child turn against what they believe in terms of who they are, of who God is, and to desecrate all manner of flesh, all manner of church institution, all manner of sign and symbol that a child could in any way be attached to.
Cannibalism. It's difficult to believe, but in every case we examined, children described it.
The hearts were cut out, and the children were made to chew pieces of these children's hearts, pieces of their flesh.
Is cannibalism part of the ritual?
The children have spoken about this in almost every instance. Also, human feces, or drinking the urine, or drinking human blood.
That's part of the ritual.
Right.
I have an old 3-inch scar here on my wrist where my friends used to cut my arm open and bleed my blood into a cup and drink it mixed with wine and urine 4 times a year as a ceremony to Satan.
And finally, cremation. Most of the children describe witnessing it. It might explain why no bodies have been found. So far, police have failed to make the connection, as in the case of yet another youngster who, with his mother's consent, described how bodies were disposed of.
He would take the bodies and put a trash bag over the feet and head. He'd put it, and then what he would do is he had his car parked out back. So he took them to the funeral home, and they were cremated, and nobody ever knew anything about the bodies.
These people cover their tracks very well. When they dispose of a body, they use that body as well. They will use, as I said, they will cremate that body. They will use the ashes that will become part of what they will continue to present to that particular group, and they will disperse that. They're not going to do some simple murder and leave a body in a stream for you to pick up the pieces of.
6 clues that point to the illegal worship of Satan, each based on the testimony of children, and none of it has ever been proved.
The problem that exists is we're getting the stories, but we don't have the victims. Once it's proven with one case, it's going to add more credibility to each one of the other cases.
Until that one case is proved, the link between crime and satanic cults will remain speculative. The victims in this report did break the grip of Satanism, but each is left with permanent scars, and experts say they were lucky to escape.
When you get into one of these groups, there's only a couple ways you can get out. One is death, the other is mental institutions, or the third, you can't get out.
That's terrifying, and that's no choice.
Serious business.
If the police were aware of this, it might be that they could get to the instigators, to the top people. Why isn't there more awareness on the part of the police?
Police are very reluctant to investigate these crimes as satanic crimes, Barbara, because communities quite naturally don't want their reputation stigmatized as being the home of the devil. They prefer to try to categorize them as drug-related crimes, sex-related crimes, or robbery or something that they're more familiar with.
Individual, rather than finding out who's behind it. Look, if this happens to your kid, or if you look at this and if you have children, you say, could this happen to my child out of some kind of rebellion? How would a parent be aware?
Many youngsters are into it, teenagers and younger, and the clues are there. The satanic symbol, 666, if you see that written on your child's notebook, if they're into heavy metal music, if they're associating with strange characters or drifting off to ceremonies and not explaining where they're at, it's well worth it for parents to look deeper and ask, what exactly are you up to?
And with whom?
Because this is serious.
It could be harmless. It could just be a diversion, but it could also be deadly serious.
Absolutely.
Fascinating and horrifying reporter. Thank you for bringing it to us.
Well,
The occult. According to evidence, some of the most bizarre and heinous crimes in recent history may have been rooted there. In 1977, there was New York's Son of Sam murders. Henry Lee Lucas, perhaps the most prolific serial murderer in the United States history, who claims to have murdered several hundred women over a 25-year period. The McMartin Preschool in Manhattan Beach, California, associated with child abuse. And most recently, California's so-called Night Stalker, accounting for nearly 20 deaths on the West Coast. All of these have had links to Satanism or devil worship. Sandy Gallant is a police officer with the San Francisco Police Department, and she has seen it. And Dr. Alfred Kudley is a psychiatrist who is also a consultant to the LA County Superior Court, joins us from our Burbank studios, and he has too. But Dr. Kudley, this litany of crime I've described, does that exaggerate the phenomenon, or is it bigger than we would dare expect?
Well, I don't think there's any question that crime has increased in many respects in recent years. I think some of that actually is due to the dissolution of the family in the United States in the last 25 years. The number of children who grow up with one or no parent has mushroomed tremendously. As a result, these children develop psychological problems very early in life, get into hassles at school, get into drugs and alcohol, and before they're 10, they're violating the law.
But not everyone who was involved...
Factor.
Excuse me, Dr. Kudley, not everybody who is involved with Satanism is a pathological murderer.
No. But I think that as far as the cult movement is concerned, I think that primarily mushroomed primarily in the 70s and then in the 80s. And it's been speculated there's probably maybe 2,000 such cults in the United States today, and perhaps as many as 2 million people belonging to those various and sundry cults.
Joining us now in San Francisco is Officer Gallant. When did Satanism start showing up in the Bay Area?
We began noticing it around 1980 when we started receiving different types of reports that Satanism appeared to be on the rise. One thing that I think is important, however, is to distinguish between the types of Satanism. One is actually traditional satanic groups. Those have been around for many, many years. Now we are seeing fringe people or dabblers that are starting to incorporate Satanism into different types of violent behavior, and we're also seeing a rise in teenage Satanism.
Dr. Kudley, that makes me think that some of these, shall we say, freelance devil worshippers, like the Night Stalker, the accused Ramirez, who flashes a pentagram to cameras. Now, is he, someone like him, really a devil worshipper, or are they just using Satanism to shock?
Well, I think that it was interesting. They apparently noted that he had heard this band, the AC/DC band, playing the song, The Night Prowler. And the lyrics, the words of that song, echo quite accurately what he actually carried out. So in a certain sense, he was identifying with that particular song and the contents of it in his actions.
Are you suggesting that had he never heard the song, he would never have murdered?
No, not at all. I'm simply saying that that seems to be one of the precipitating factors in his case, and maybe accounts for the modus operandi that he followed. But I think his behavior pattern would have existed anyway, and it's just a matter of what precipitated it. I think we have to ask ourselves always, why does a person start murdering when they do?
Officer Gallant, when it involves teenagers and kids, do you find it just an excuse?
I think for children especially, and we're finding that they're getting younger and younger and getting involved in this type of thing, they see it as a way to get everything that they want now. One thing that I've noted in talking to them is that our kids really don't think that we have a future, and they see this because of the violent way that society is portrayed to them. This offers them really virtually everything they want now, and there's also no rules or laws for them to follow.
Any thoughts about what to do about it?
One thing that I feel is real important is educating parents and families. Also, I think we have to get back to a we-oriented society. Right now, I think we're in the mode of thinking we're very me-oriented. And when the doctor was talking about really a breakdown in the family, I see that also as a real factor in what's happening with our kids today.
Well, all right. We'll finish exactly where we began then. Sandy Gallant, thank you. Dr. Kudley, thank you as well.
You're welcome.
God's chosen people. Others call them militant white groups bent on exterminating Jews and blacks. The aim of these so-called hate groups is to take over the government by violent revolution. John Adams has more in this report.
Come on down, David.
The Jews are out to destroy this country. And it's only going to be a matter of time till the people of this country wake up, and they'll see that fact.
You're spending hundreds of millions and perhaps billions of dollars to bus white girls into black schools to be mauled by black apes.
Get the heck out of here! I didn't come all the way down here to hear you! Go over there!
I'm an Anglo-Saxon. I'm proud to be an Anglo-Saxon. And I'm not going to step aside and say I'm not. I'm not going to take second seat to anyone else, especially aliens flooding into our country, taking our jobs at this time.
These men are members of white supremacy groups established to eliminate what they call aliens. That is, anyone who is not white Anglo-Saxon. Their greatest hate burns for Jews, who they say are not the real chosen people of God. Anglos, they say, are the actual lost tribes of Israel.
Jesus Christ, Jesus the Messiah, Yahshua, Yahweh in a flesh body, was not a Jew, as you call Jews today. He was, and he is the Most High.
Jim Wickstrom is the leader of the Posse Comitatus, a group headquartered in Wisconsin, and one of a number that are popping up all over the country. And although the groups may be increasing in number, Erwin Sewell of the Jewish Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith says these types of groups have been around for a long time.
They represent only a tiny minority of the American people, but they've been here a long time. We're talking about the Ku Klux Klan, the American Nazis, and various other hate groups. So they're not new, it's just that they've suddenly turned very violent.
At approximately 5 p.m. on this date, David Charles Tate, age 22, was apprehended near the intersection of Highway 160.
Indeed, many members of the groups have been implicated in a number of crimes. This man, for example, Gary Yarborough, was mentioned as possibly connected with the murder of a popular Denver radio talk show host, Alan Berg, a Jew who was often outspoken against the white extremists. Berg was said to have been the #1 person on the various groups' hit list, and there were other killings along with robberies of banks and armored vehicles and counterfeiting. In all, 24 men from the various militant camps were arrested. Some of the incidents happened during the time the Aryan Nations World Conference in Urban Guerrilla Warfare was taking place last year. David Lowe of the Anti-Defamation League says it is just further proof that they are bent on terrorizing the country and that these are the birth pangs of a revolution to take over the country.
I don't think it's an accident that these various acts that we've been reading about on the West Coast and elsewhere were taking place at about the time that this conference was going on.
Kerry Noble, the leader of the Covenant, the Sword, and the Arm of the Lord.
It hasn't been proven that any of those people did it. None of them have gone to court. So they're still, supposedly, innocent until proven guilty. So Matthews is innocent. Yarborough is innocent. They've just because they've been charged, according to the laws of this country, does not imply that they are guilty of those crimes. But the feds are saying they did it. That, again, is turning public opinion automatically. How can those people get a fair trial now?
Remember this, men of the Aryan race. If one drop of Aryan blood is spilled tonight or any other time, there will be revenge.
There is little doubt the goal of these groups is to take over a country which they see as losing control to the Jews, a people they see synonymous with communism, as evidenced here in some of their drawings. Richard Butler is the pastor of the First Church of Jesus Christ Christian Aryan Nations in Hayden Lake, Idaho. He is not ashamed to praise Adolf Hitler along with Jesus Christ. Their logo symbolizes a swastika. Their prayers are offered to Christ with a familiar Nazi salute, and their rhetoric is just as familiar.
So long as this alien is here, so long as he pretends to have power over us, hate is our law, and revenge is our duty. Our sword is true, our shield is forged of honor, in age as youth, our hearts, our lives we pledge, though we may die to save our people and our land, this cause will stand, our millions marching on.
Although some see the recent arrest of the 24 white extremists as weakening the cause of the movement,
Others say it has stirred up a hornet's nest, giving them more reason to cause trouble across the country. Despite the immediate effect on the white supremacy groups, one thing is certain: they will not go away, and they are more likely to get even more militant. John Adams, CBN News.
Thank you, John. Our guest today went underground for 4 months to live with a neo-Nazi group called Aryan Nations. His goal was to infiltrate the group and write a 4-part series on the workings of that organization. Would you please welcome to the 700 Club, Mr. Peter Lake. Hello, Peter.
Hello, thank you.
What is the goal of these white supremacist groups?
Their goal is to establish a white homeland in the United States, which they feel is the promised land, as laid out in the Bible.
How do they get these ideas and these doctrines about being from the lost tribes of Israel and God's chosen people, etc.? Where do they base those ideas on?
Completely in the Bible. In the King James Version, it's a narrow interpretation, and I can't give it to you exactly, but they get it right out of the Bible.
People get a lot of things out of the Bible out of context that have no bearing on reality. You knew many of these people that we saw on the clip that John just did.
Yeah.
Some of these people that were arrested. For instance, Gary Yarborough, who is accused of killing Alan Berg. What kind of a person was he?
Well, Gary Yarborough, in fact, was convicted of firearms charges. He's been sentenced to 25 years, but has nothing to do with Alan Berg. Gary Yarborough, though, was I regarded him as a dangerous person. He was a real...
They all seem dangerous to me.
Well, and many of them proved to be. Gary Yarborough was a dedicated soldier, a follower, an ex-convict who was recruited out of prison and was willing to do anything at all for Aryan Nations. Dave Tate, who I was arrested with at a cross-lighting in Los Angeles, as you saw, just murdered a state trooper in Missouri. He's accused of it, and I believe he did it.
Where did these people come from? And why is there so much hate in them? Have they been hurt in the past by people that they blame for their condition? Where does all this hate come from? Where do they get the idea that they have to take revenge out on society?
In many cases, it comes from their parents. It's like a disease. They catch it at second, third, fourth generation. Many of them have Klan back in their family. Others are associated with members of these organizations, and they latch onto it. They're unwilling to conform to any of society's mores or bend to society's conditions, and they have a lot of hubris, the pride that will just prevent them from doing what it takes to become a part of the real world. It's very easy to have strange notions when you don't have to worry about reality.
Well, especially when you get secluded, you wear masks so you can remain anonymous when you're in public. It is a very it's a safe though dangerous world, if you can see the paradox. Exactly. I suppose. Do they want to really infiltrate America? I mean, are they into infiltrating America through politics and other legal means, or is it purely violent?
They're in a transition period now. We're not going to see groups like the Ku Klux Klan, I think, as we have in the past, because that's allowed them to be set up and infiltrated by the FBI, by writers like myself, and ultimately destroyed. I think that they are going to adopt more yuppie ways. They're going to wear suits and ties and try to blend into the mainstream, form coalitions previously unheard of. Some of the Klan are in fact trying to form coalitions with blacks because they feel that the Jews are the ones that must be resisted.
I know that in California a few years ago, Tom Metzger, who was a Klan leader, or he was a local official of the Klan at least, ended up becoming a Democratic candidate for governor, I believe. And the Democrats were quite actually embarrassed by it because he happened to be the only one that ran for that particular office. And it does seem as though they are coming close to getting into the legal ranks of society.
Yes, they're trying very hard, but so far none of them have succeeded. And I still don't think they're going to succeed, but they are going to be trying and adopting new techniques.
Why the violence?
The violence grew out, I think, out of the frustration. Richard Butler preaches what has to be done up to a point, but he doesn't say go out and rob banks and armored cars as these people did. But he gets right up to it, and they take the next step. They say, well, what's left for us? It's like King Henry II, who complained about Becket and to his barons and said, who will rid me, you know, of this man? Can't anyone do anything? And they go off and kill him in the cathedral. And then come back and he says, well, I didn't tell you to do that. Well, Richard Butler doesn't exactly tell them to do this either, but nevertheless he endorses their methods.
Can you give us an estimate of the number of people that are involved in groups like this?
Very hard. The actual number is now small and growing smaller. But like a white star that's growing compacted, it's becoming very dense and very hot. They perhaps have, throughout the country, hundreds of thousands of sympathizers, which is a small percentage in this large country. Actual card-carrying numbers, I would say, in the hundreds, possibly just a few thousand at the most.
It is appalling to me to see groups such as this that would link Adolf Hitler and Jesus Christ in the same breath and then say that their motto is hate. How in the world do they get that out of Jesus Christ?
Well, they incorporate hate. They put hate right in their back pocket. They say that Jesus was not Christian, was not Jewish, I'm sorry, was not Jewish. You see, that's one of the ways, because it wouldn't do for them to be worshiping, you know, a Jew, paying any respect to him. So that's the first step, and they trace a complicated...
So somehow they have Anglo-Saxonized Jesus Christ?
That's right, exactly. And they say that England is the promised land, and by extension from England, the United States, and that they are the lost tribes, and that all the blessings in the Bible are due them. And they deny the Holocaust, too. This is something else that's important.
Of course they do. I mean, I can't imagine being on a hit list. You are on a hit list. You apparently, you're not really the most favored character among Aryan nations and other white supremacist groups. Does this not bother you a bit?
Well, it bothers me less now that most of the people who've put me on their lists are in jail. I feel a bit better about that.
I bet it does. Peter Lake, thank you for coming by and saying hello and telling us a little bit more about these groups. They seem awfully dangerous and something that, what do we do about it? I'm not sure. I guess law enforcement has to take over here.
Law enforcement, and I think programs like this that publicize what they're up to so people really understand what they're doing and what the consequences of their actions are. They do an enormous psychic damage to people when they deny the Holocaust, when they tell these lies. And I think just education and information is really the best way to combat them.
All right. Thank you, Peter Lake.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Then back...